You have a favorite Disney movie, whether it be Cinderella, Aladdin, or Moana. But you also have a not favorite Disney movie. Now this isn't your least favorite movie, rather it's the movie that whenever you're discussing it with a friend, you'll usually say something that starts with, well, it's not my favorite Disney film. To make it clear, a not favorite film is one you appreciate even if you don't completely love it. These would be your Oliver and Companies, your Brother Bears, and your Princess and the Frogs. Your appreciation for these films could come from its unique concept, its animation, a certain scene, a specific song, or even a single character. Even if the film isn't perfect or has downright deal-breaking aspects, it still has a special place in your heart for that one spark of something special. And my not favorite Disney movie will always be Treasure Planet. But today we're talking about my second not favorite Disney movie, Meet the Robinsons. Disney has always had a rocky history in 3D in the 2000s. With the rise of computer animation and new competition in the forms of DreamWorks and their adopted little brother Pixar, Disney was beginning to lose their grip on the North American animated film market. Something would have to change in order for them to thrive in the evolving animation landscape. The most blatant aspect of Disney films that was in need of renovation would be their stories. Now, the Disney movies of the Renaissance era were great, I love them, but even people that love them must admit they followed a pretty strict formula. All of them centered around a coming-of-age protagonist, maybe with an animal sidekick, featured a threatening villain, included some comedic relief to varying degrees of quality, involved a budding romance, and contained a multitude of catchy songs. By the 2000s, many moviegoers grew tired of this formula and purchased tickets for the more captivating films from Pixar and DreamWorks. Gee, I wonder what's the biggest difference between these movies and these movies? This is a hard one. We'll have to get back to this question. So the Renaissance formula was no more, and Disney converted the then-in-development film Kingdom of the Sun from another Renaissance film to the wacky comedy we know today as The Emperor's New Groove. Boom, baby! This change in direction marked the beginning of the Disney Renaissance era. Throughout the era, you never really knew what to expect from a Disney film. You could get an action-adventure film like Atlantis or Treasure Planet, a sci-fi Ghibli-like drama like Lilo and Stitch, or whatever Home on the Range was trying to be. While their filmography's consistency throughout the 2000s was nowhere near as good as in the 90s, it was still commendable to see Disney getting creative and taking new risks. Did it work? At least Lilo and Stitch did well. I don't understand. Why did these films perform well? Maybe the marketing didn't sell people on it. Maybe it had to compete with more popular films. Or maybe they simply just weren't as good as previous Disney films. Or they simply weren't animated using the same technology Ants did. Oh, that was the big difference between those films! While the film's animation styles may not have been as strong as a contributor to why those films failed, it's still a noticeable reason. What would you rather purchase with your hard-earned money? A ticket to a film in a style you've seen multiple times? Or a ticket to a film in a new, innovative style? The answer was obvious, and Disney knew this, so after the failure of Home on the Range, Disney shifted their focus entirely to CG animated films. Wait, you're telling me Home on the Range did not save hand-drawn animation? So Disney animators put aside their pencils and papers, fired up their computers, heard that glorious startup jingle that's playing through your heads as I'm telling you this, and learned how to animate using one of those newfangled computers! It was a grueling task to speak softly about it, but they endured. They adapted to the new worlds of 3D visuals. They broke new ground amongst their company, and all their efforts paid off when on November 4th, 2005, Walt Disney Pictures released their very second computer animated picture. It was, let's face it, garbage. But that's okay, we all make a Chicken Little every now and again. I mean, look what I found in my bed this morning. There's always the next film, which is, according to this PNG of a piece of paper, Disney's next animated film will be an adaptation of the children's book, A Day with Wilbur Robinson. Fun fact, the writer and illustrator of that book, William Joyce, was the producer and production designer of Blue Sky's Robots. During the film's development, some strange things were happening at the House of Mouse. Ain't no doubt about it. Disney bought Pixar outright, and part of that acquisition, the famous/infamous John Lasseter became the chief creative officer at Walt Disney, leading him to rewrite over half of the story. This new blood at Disney produced an improved product? Well, sort of. It made over $169 million against a $150 million budget, and received okay-ish reviews. But despite this lukewarm response, I believe this film deserves a lot more recognition than it gets. It seems like every few months we find a new show or movie to shower with affection. I think it's about time Meet the Robinsons became the next rags to riches story in the animation community. But why does this film deserve this attention, you might ask?
That is an excellent question.
Well, I've wasted enough time regurgitating information you already knew. Let's take a look at Meet the Robinsons. Man, there's nothing quite like the experience of watching a DVD. It's so peaceful, serene, and...
This Disney DVD is enhanced with Disney's Fastplay.
Oh, okay. I don't know if this is a hotcake, but I've never found Disney Fastplay that scary. Granted, when I was younger, I dealt with this, that, and...
The audience is now deaf.
So I was already hardened up by those logos. But the concept behind Fastplay was actually quite fascinating. To clear up the misconception, Disney's Fastplay was not meant to be a faster way to get to the movie. It was instead created to bridge the gap between watching a VHS and watching a DVD. With the advent of the DVDs, people were met with the major advantage from VHS tapes being that they were far more interactive. People were also met with the major drawback that they were far more interactive. People didn't want to spend half an afternoon navigating a DVD menu just so their kids could watch Lion King 1.5. They got laundry to do. Also, some people prefer the theater-like experience of VHS tapes, how they had trailers and commercials preceding the movie. So, how do you make everyone happy? Simple!
Disney's Fastplay.
With Fastplay, if you want to get straight to your movie or bonus features, just press the button to take you there. If you want to sit back and enjoy your movie, or you just lost your remote, you can just do nothing and enjoy the previews. Now Sally can fold her clothes while little Steve watches Cinematic Platinum. Well, maybe not the best thing on the entire planet, it was still a cool concept to make everyone happy. It's just a shame no one could understand its unique concept. Huh, kinda like Meet the Robinsons. Oh right, remember when this video was a review of that movie? Yeah, let's finally talk about it. Our movie starts off the way all great kids movies should start off. Child abandonment. We see a mother place her baby at the front door of an orphanage, and apparently the orphanage is owned by NBC. I hope they're better at childcare than making worthwhile streaming services. We then fast forward to see that the baby has grown into a young inventor named Lewis, who is currently in the process of creating an invention to show to a potential family. We're also introduced to his roommate Goob. Goob is hands down my favorite character in this film. I love how tired he looks and acts, and I love his rambling. He just sounds perfect.
I mean, there's so many things in the world that can be improved. Moving sidewalks, flying cars.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you, Lewis, but moving sidewalks are already invented. Haven't you ever been to an airport? In all honesty, I really like how the scene shows how passionate Lewis is for inventing. I hope this couple feels the same way.
What's your favorite sport?
Ugh, typical parents, only caring about their kids' athletic skills. It doesn't matter how good they are at solving calculus problems, how many chemical reactions you know, or how much knowledge of the Kirby franchise you have memorized. The only thing that matters is whether or not you can throw a skinned pig halfway across the field. I hope this guy has an allergic reaction. Lewis then goes on to reveal his latest invention to them. A machine that can make the perfect PB&J. Now, I want to be nice to this completely fictitious kid and his completely fictitious feelings, but this invention looks like an as-seen-on-TV product. Lewis then turns on the invention and, wait a minute, Lewis is an amateur inventor in a kid's movie.
You know what that means?
It works as well as an as-seen-on-TV product.
It's jammed!
Yeah, and peanut butter too. Oh, no problem. It's a few splatters. It should be easy to clean. Sweet Lord Enmo, what's wrong with your face? This brings us to one of this film's most glaring issues. The animation and character designs have not aged well. You could tell they were going for an art style similar to that of The Incredibles, but in my opinion, The Incredibles looks much better than Meet the Robinsons, and that was 3 years prior. However, I will cut the animation team some slack. This was Disney's first CG film starring humans. Not even Pixar could make a good human on their first try. Suffice it to say, Lewis didn't get adopted, so he goes to the orphanage's rooftop to sulk. Don't feel too bad, Lewis. You just had a Chicken Little. We all deal with that every now and again. I mean, look what I found in the toilet this afternoon.
We just haven't found the right couple yet.
124.
What?
That's how many adoption interviews I've had. 124.
Oh, Lewis, come on now. You're exaggerating just to make your point.
Well, a little on the exposition-y side, I really like how the scene highlights Lewis's fears and anxieties about being rejected so many times and not being wanted by anyone, even his own mother. It feels real. It should feel real since this film's director, Steven Anderson, was once an orphan. In fact, it was Lewis's fears about not being wanted and his questions about where he came from that convinced him to direct the film. And his personal touches to Lewis make his drama feel a lot more compelling than the typical "I'm an orphan because that's sad" backstory you see in a bunch of stories. Through a misunderstanding of Mildred's words, Lewis gets the idea that he can recover his memory of his mother so he can find her. In order to do so, he'll need to invent a machine to scan his memories. And in order to build said machine, he'll need a montage.
He was up all night working on his stupid project. Ah, that's good, Joe.
Can we please put Goob in the museum? At the science fair, we're introduced to the judges being Lewis's teacher, Flo from Progressive, and Tufts, actor from the Emperor Island Players?
I release a sonic wave from my mouth.
Next up is Lizzie and her
fire ant farm.
That's right.
Well, it wouldn't be a 2000s movie without a goth archetype. Meanwhile, Lewis begins to set up his invention when he gets interrupted by a Jimmy Neutron knockoff named Wilbur, who warns him about a man in a bowler hat, but not without subjecting him to unfunny dialogue. I can excuse some dated animation, but I can never excuse lackluster comedy. While it doesn't go to the lows of scatological humor or forced pop culture references, it doesn't go beyond basic kids movie humor. But LionDog, I thought the dinosaur arms joke was pretty funny. Yeah, it was, and you saw the trailers. Wasn't so funny when you actually watched the movie, was it? Gee, I guess that's what being an assist trophy for 3 games will do to you. This is Bowler Hat Guy. Yes, that is his actual name. His hat also doubles as a sidekick, Doris. They sort of share a Doofenshmirtz and Parrot the Platypus dynamic where the main villain is kind of an idiot and his mute partner is the real brains of the duo. Funnily enough, they actually predate Doofenshmirtz by a couple of months. Doris proceeds to tamper with Lewis's memory scanner, leading to some wacky antics.
Coach, suck it up, okay?
Okay, that was pretty funny. You know, while the film's more blatant jokes mostly fall flat, I've noticed the more subtle jokes like quick lines and funny background gags work a lot better. Lewis returns to the rooftop after his inventions malfunction, where he begins to question himself. Blow away! Blow away! Blow away! Yay! Over the top symbolism! And just when it looks like Lewis is about to give up on his dream, Jimmy Neutron comes back, revealing that he's from the future, and Lewis, being the man of science, isn't buying it.
You're crazy!
Ho ho! I am not crazy.
Oh yeah, Captain Time Travel?
Hey, Captain Time Travel, just like the lunchbox Lewis used for his machine. This detail doesn't come back in some sort of Chekhov's gun that ends up being a major plot point later in the film. It's just a small Easter egg that helps this world feel a bit more lived in.
I'm just gonna go lock myself in my room and hide under the covers for a couple of years.
Are we sure Lewis isn't the time traveler? Seeing that Lewis isn't buying anything he's selling him, Wilbur decides the best way to convince him is to push him off the roof.
Okay.
No, that's not what happens. Instead, he just faceplants into the time machine.
Where are we going?
To the future!
This is one of the film's shining aspects, the film's version of the future. You know those future memes where everything has a generic blue-gray look to it? Well, this movie throws that out in favor of what I can only describe as 1950s Seussian. I use Seussian for the whimsical innovations like the self-constructing buildings and the bubble transportation that's one wind-blown leaf away from a lawsuit. And the varied colors and the sleek, rounded design of everything makes me want to use words like golly, swell, and gee willikers. The 50s style of the future also benefits the film's motif. What better style for a film about family than designs from an era known for their families? Well, Wilbur's plan was to inspire Lewis by showing him the future. Lewis instead realizes that he can just take the time machine to see his mom. This leads to my discovery that this film is in the 2000s kids movie where 2 characters fight over who gets to control the fancy vehicle, destroying in the process genre. I figured this out because Lewis and Wilbur fight over who gets to control the time machine, destroying it in the process. Meanwhile, in the present, Bowler Hat Guy steals the memory scanner and plans to sell it to this Despicable Me character. And he gets rejected due to him not knowing how to operate it. Should have read the manual over once or twice. We cut back to Lewis and Wilbur pushing the time machine into the Robinson garage, where we meet the Robinsons' robot butler, Carl. He's tolerable. He's not funny, but he isn't annoyingly unfunny. He's mostly just there to give Wilbur someone to bounce off of when Lewis isn't around. Also, Lewis needs to wear this hat to hide that he's from the past. Huh, I doubt that's going to be important later.
Stay.
But
Well, that was fast. Lewis ends up in the front yard where he meets Wilbur's grandpa, Bud, and the two of them begin their search for Bud's missing teeth. Want to know how little this film follows its source material? This subplot, that lasts around 5 to 7 minutes, is the entire story of the book. That's ridiculous. That would be like turning that simple picture book about a picky eater into a road trip comedy. Throughout their search, they come across the members of the Robinson family and all their weird quirks. Another one of this film's strongest aspects is the whimsical realism of the scenario Lewis is in with the Robinson family. Lewis meeting these interesting members of the family isn't dissimilar to when you visit your friend's house and being introduced to their family and all their wacky quirks. It gives it all a familiar feel while still being a wacky cartoon. But that begs the question, why does the Robinson extended family live under the same roof? There doesn't seem to be any holiday or any mention of a family reunion, so they can't be visiting. My best guess is that in the 2030s, mortgage rates go through the roof, so extended families decide to live in one large house to cut costs. I can't tell whether or not that was intentional. Meanwhile, Wilbur is assuring Carl that he has everything under control by using replicas to explain his plan.
Excuse the crudity of this model. I didn't have time to build it to scale or to paint it.
What about taking him back to see his mom?
I just told him that to buy some time.
Yes, because you can't make an animated film without a liar revealed subplot. After finding Bud's missing teeth in one of the frog's mouths, need a bucket to throw up in? Lewis runs into Wilbur and suddenly...
It's recap time!
Who have you met and what have you learned?
Okay, Bud, Fritz, and Joe are brothers. Fritz is married to Petunia, and is she...
Frankie? Yes.
Tallulah and Laszlo are their children. Joe is married to Billy. Lefty is the butler. Spike and Dimitri are twins, and I don't know who they're related to.
Neither do we. Go on.
Lucila's married to Bud, and your dad Cornelius is their son. What does Cornelius look like?
Tom Selleck.
Okay, Cornelius is married to Franny, and her brothers are Gaston and Art.
You're forgetting something.
Forgetting? Oh, right. Wilbur is the son of Franny and Cornelius.
Lewis and Wilbur get back to work on the time machine. Surely Lewis will be able to fix the time machine, no.
Well, you know what they say. Keep moving.
Don't say it!
Is it just me, or do Lewis and Wilbur just not have that much chemistry? I know this is the classic Pixar/Disney duo of two strangers who don't get along that eventually form an unbreakable bond. But with the rest of those, there was usually a sign of a good bond, or at least a good comedic chemistry. I don't feel either of those in Lewis and Wilbur. So far, most of their interactions are just Wilbur being talkative and Lewis being annoyed by him. They're not funny nor compelling, leaving their interactions feeling empty. If anything, it feels like Wilbur is the middleman to the bond between Lewis and the Robinsons. Continuing with the creative take on visiting a friend's house, Lewis gets invited to dinner while Doofenshmirtz Early Access and Doris hide outside. How did they know that Lewis and Wilbur were in the future? They tracked them by their, and I quote, time travel residue. What? What's that even supposed to mean? Is that a residue that the time machine emits? Is it the time machine's power source? How? At the dinner table, Lewis gets himself well acquainted with the rest of the Robinson family, and while most of them are just one-note characters, it's still charming to see them act as a family and play off one another in their weird ways. It's also nice to see them treat Lewis like part of the family, and even encourage him after he fails to fix one of Carl's mechanisms.
Like my husband always says.
Gee, I wonder what the message of the film will be. One criticism I see for a few animated films is that they have a cliché message, or another film handled the themes better. While the latter has some merit, the former criticism doesn't. The main demographic of these films are children, and children aren't expected to watch every single film known to man. As long as the moral is handled well, it shouldn't matter if it was done better elsewhere as long as the children learn something from it. I bring this up since, while this film features a very simple message and wears its morals on its sleeve, it's still an important lesson for everyone to remember. After all, the simplest morals are usually the ones we need to be reminded of the most. After the first attempt to kidnap Lewis by using Doris to control one of Franny's frogs failed, Bowler Hat Guy's next attempt is to use a dinosaur that he took from the Stone Age. Wait a minute. A mustachioed man uses a symbiote hat to take control of a frog and a dinosaur. After seeing the dinosaur grab Lewis, the family leaps into action, using their gimmicks to fight off the dinosaur and rescue Lewis. Continuing with the progression of Lewis's relationship, we've seen them meet Lewis, spend time with him, and now prove their commitment to them. Not only that, but this rescue scene can double as their fun family activity. Some families play board games, some families watch movies, the Robinsons fight dinosaurs.
Nice meatball shooting. Guess we made a pretty good team, huh?
Yeah. Guess we did.
What's this? Are we actually getting a sign of a budding relationship between these two? Oh, well, that's great! I can't wait to see how these two will develop! Oh no, time for everything to go wrong.
Okay, it's true. I'm from the past.
I'm pretty sure most of you are aware of how they know Lewis is from the past, but even without that reason, you can easily tell when he came from. I mean, just look at that design. That's 2000's preteen character design at its finest.
Can I at least go back and find my mom?
You promised what?
I was never gonna do it, I swear.
This is pretty standard anime movie stakes, you get used to it. Watch this. Next he's gonna say, "You lied to me?"
You lied to me?
Yes, we finally reached our obligatory third act breakup, and it's actually done better here than in most films, since it actually moves the plot forward, rather than holding back the plot to pad out the runtime. I'm looking at you, Emperor's New Groove. Being hilarious does not excuse bad writing. After feeling betrayed by the Robinson family, he forms an alliance with Bowler Hat Guy and Doris, and he takes him to Bowler Hats Evil Incorporated! So Lewis can demonstrate how to operate the memory scanner. Unsurprisingly, Bowler Hat Guy turns on him.
I never did anything to you.
You still haven't figured it out.
Figured out what?
And with those lines, we've entered the All is Revealed section of the film, starting with the revelation that...
Are you saying that I'm Wilbur's
Dad?
Was that even a twist? It was pretty obvious that the kid inventor from the present would be the kid inventor of the future. The only person that this is a big reveal to is Lewis, when it really shouldn't. I find it hard to believe that Lewis didn't have a sneaking suspicion after he saw the mechanism on Carl that resembled his PB&J machine. However, I don't think it's that bad of a twist since it's not like the film hypes up the who's the father angle. And if you found that twist underwhelming, it's followed up by...
Yes, it is I, Mike Yagubian!
Never letting his frustration go after all these years, Goob decided to enact revenge. Don't be so hard on yourself. You just had a Chicken Little. We all deal with that. Look what I pulled out of my toaster. It's also worth knowing that the orphanage he lives in closed down, and the owners just left him inside. Yeah, I'd rather subscribe to Peacock than let NBC even look at my child. After his first plan to cancel Lewis failed, he met Doris, who in another twist is revealed to be a prototype invention that Lewis rejected after...
Let me guess. It got smart enough to wonder why it had to take orders.
Doris was also the one to hatch the idea about stealing the invention from the past to ruin his future, and Goob assisted by stealing one of Lewis's time machines from his garage. An endeavor made all the easier by the fact that Wilbur forgot to lock the garage door. That's right, this entire film hinges on the fact that a kid didn't do a basic household chore. Walk your rooms and clean your dogs, kids. You never know what sort of Waluigi impersonator will commit breaking and entering if you didn't. Lewis being Mr. Robinson shows how successful he'll be if he sticks on the right path. The bowler hat guy twist turns Goob into a good foil for Lewis, and Doris being the one in charge lines up with how competent she is throughout the movie compared to Goob. I also like how the fact that Lewis created Doris shows how even when you're successful, you'll still make mistakes. We often dog on Disney for having twists for the sake of twists when they were executing way better twists a decade prior.
He just focused on the bad stuff when all he had to do was keep moving forward.
Take responsibility for my own life or blame you. Ding, 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 ding. Blame you wins hands down.
The quote of a generation.
That was his mistake.
Fortunately, Wilbur and Carl come to save Lewis.
Ow! That's for not locking the garage door.
You know about that?
I know everything.
You gotta admit, this'll be a great story to tell me someday.
Aw, it's nice to see more development from the relationship. Come on! Why is it that whenever we see a glimpse of a potential bond between Wilbur and Lewis, the character pair we should care the most about, it gets interrupted or they're torn apart? Goob then goes on to present the memory scanner and... Lewis then sees on a monitor that Goob went on to mass-produce Doris, causing a robot uprising that eventually turned on him.
Caution, rogue robots.
No, this can't be happening, no!
Oh, Lewis, it's already happened.
Okay... This film went from happy-go-lucky family fun time to a demented robot dystopia in a matter of seconds. This is super grim, comes completely out of left field, and I appreciate every second of it. I should, since the scene barely scrapes a minute. And keep in mind, this all happened because Wilbur forgot to lock the garage door. This is how important securing your property can be. A simple act of carelessness could have grave consequences not just on you, but on others as well. If only there was a way the Robinson family could have added an extra layer of protection to their property to prevent outsiders from stealing or even seeing their information. If only they had today's sponsor, Raid Shadow! Lewis jumps into the time machine and gets the machine working again. He then uses it to travel to when Goob signed the contract. I wonder how Lewis is going to defeat an adversary like Doris.
I am never going to invent you.
After defeating Doris, Lewis takes Goob
Back to the future!
and tries to convince Wilbur to adopt Goob into the Robinson family, which should really be the mom's decision.
Okay, Mr. Yagubian, do you want to be a Robin's... Where'd he go? Goob.
Among the few people who actually talk about this movie, there's a small debate surrounding whether or not the alternate scene where Lewis sends Goob back to his game to fix his mistakes is better. I personally prefer the scene we got. While this is a film with time travel elements, I think it's a lot better to have Goob's mistakes be irreversible, because that's just how life works. He spent all this time holding an unnecessary grudge towards Lewis that once he realized the truth, he was left with nothing. He can't go back and fix his past. All he can do is pick up whatever pieces he can and build a better future. That's a pretty strong message of revenge and regret. This was truly The Last of Us Part 2 of the 2000s. Now with his fixed time machine and a Tom Selleck cameo, Wilbur takes Lewis back home, but not without a detour.
We agreed that if you fix the time machine, I'd take you back to see your mom.
What?
A deal's a deal.
I know I've been harsh on Lewis and Wilbur's friendship throughout the movie, but this scene with Wilbur keeping his word to Lewis after letting him down almost makes up for that. Lewis begins to walk up to his mom until he stops and just hides as he watches Mildred discover him for the first time. As all over the place as this movie has been, I can't help but commend it for taking the bold risk of not revealing Lewis's mother. In an age where every little tidbit of a franchise must be known, it's refreshing to see a movie leave something unanswered. Wilbur then returns Lewis to his rooftop as they begin their goodbyes.
You got that motto?
No, Wilbur, I forgot it. Remind me 20 more times. Instead of demonstrating it on himself, the scientist from earlier volunteers to use the memory scanner. Not only that, but Lewis notices a familiar face in her memories.
Would you look at that?
Whoa, honey, you're just in time.
But he's not done yet.
Frankie, what if I told you about running away? Frankie? My name's Frank, and I teach frogs music.
Wow. This kid made a groundbreaking invention, met his adopted parents, met his future wife, and received major accolades all in one day. I wish I had days as productive as that. We then see a pretty satisfying conclusion of Lewis saying goodbye to Goob and Mildred as he leaves to live with Lucille and Bud and start his inventing career. Sure, the song they use is a little sappy, but I think it works in the scene's favor. I also love the song's first line. Let it go. It's like they somehow know. We end on a Walt Disney quote, and that was Meet the Robinsons, a film that I believe is more than deserving of a second chance. While I've mentioned my gripes with this film, like its awkward animation, its heavy-handedness, and the underwhelming chemistry of the two main characters, those don't take away from this film's highlights. The charm of the family, the occasional great line, the couple of standout characters, and the simple yet compelling narrative and themes make this a fun film to return to every now and again. So once you're all finished watching WandaVision, and you're looking for something to watch on Disney Plus, you can't go wrong with my not favorite Disney movie. Meet the Robinsons is more than a fun film. It's a send-off to an era of Disney we might never see again. This film is, in a way, a culmination of what made the experimental era the beautiful mess that it was. The unique concept, the annoying side characters, and the original charm of that era are all found in Meet the Robinsons. Not only that, but aspects that we associate with Disney's recent successes can be found here, like the imaginative worlds, the unlikely friends, and heck, even twist villains. Meet the Robinsons is a film that embodies failure, creativity, and perseverance, not only for an animation studio, but for everyone. To those of you who are still watching this rambling mess of a video that I've been working on for months, I have one thing to say to you. Keep moving forward. So after such a unique film, what's next for Walt Disney Animation Studio? Well, kind of the opposite, but oh, you see that? That's a pin. And we'll put that pin in this conversation and come back to it later. Have a great day, and lock your garage door.